Okay, so we've already talked about brainology. Now we're going to look at values, safety, and understanding. And when we were talking before about brainology, you're recognizing a fixed mindset would be, oh, I feel unsafe, I can't have these conversations. Well, when you have a fixed mindset, you're oftentimes stuck in your understanding of your values. And so your fear is really set in maybe an unwillingness to kind of understand where you might have to be more understanding. Okay, so I'm probably not explaining that very well, but that's okay. I'm trying to tie them all together to help you understand why we do brainology first before we do all the other things that help us understand who we are as composers. And in brainology, we have a fixed mindset. The idea is that new things are scary, right? Like, I don't want to do new things. I don't want to think about other things. I don't want to think about how other people do other things. I just want to stay in my box and do my thing only. The problem with that is you're completely ignoring the fact that other people have experiences in their life too, right? Oftentimes, and I'm seeing this more so lately than I have before. A dominant culture oftentimes becomes fearful when other non-dominant cultures start to become bigger and more influential throughout and around people's experiences. And sometimes people are like, no, 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 I can't. And they get very stuck in this mindset because they're so afraid of changing or being changed. Well, the reality is you will change with experiences, whether it's someone's culture influencing you or not. As you grow as a human, or just as you walk through life as a human, you will change, and you change because you have more experiences, and you want that. You want to change over time. Oftentimes the hope would be that you quote unquote change for the better, right? What's better? I don't know. One person's better is different than another. I'm going to talk about that in value. So this is hard because I could be talking from any point of view. I could be talking about any point of view, and it is going to feel like I'm talking about either you or somebody else. So it's tough the way we have this conversation to understand that, yeah, the whole point is I'm trying to be neutral so you can see that whatever side I'm talking about is exactly right. It's everyone saying the same thing, they're just saying it a little different. Okay. So you could either side, I say either side, I don't know what that means when I say side. I guess I could say maybe politically or whatever. This side's screaming this. Well, they're both saying the same damn thing. They're literally everyone's saying the same thing. They're just saying it coming from different values. Okay, so let us get into that. Now, when we talk about composer, we're talking about composing from experience. And experience is, different for everyone. Some people have very similar experiences, which is why when we share, in composition, you go like, oh, me too, yay. And oftentimes people will share an experience, you're like, did not expect that, did not know that was a thing. And that's good too, right? Learning what other people go through in this world is very important. So if you were born and you never changed, you would literally be an infant. Like, you wouldn't be talking, you'd have nothing. You would literally be an infant. But as an infant grows, their instinct is to develop and to walk and to talk and to grasp and to learn new words. Like, as an infant, as a child, you're taking in information and you almost want to be a part of. That is exactly your ultimate goal in life, is to continue having that childlike want and need to become oh wow, look at that and look at that, and you're growing, and the first time you see a butterfly, and that's the goal. That is the ultimate goal as human beings, is to actually become more than what we were yesterday in some capacity. That being the case, sorry, my phone just said it's getting really hot. Oops. Ah, ah, okay. Oh my goodness, I feel like I have all these issues that happen when I'm trying to do these videos. Anywho, All right. So the whole goal here is for this particular week, we're going to be talking about understanding what it means to feel safe. And oftentimes, to feel safe, we have to be around people who have the same values. But what we know from being, coming from a fixed mindset is only sticking with what's safe and not trusting the process of being willing to be a little uncomfortable to experience and understand something new, right? So to feel safe also could mean to be willing to be uncomfortable and trusting the process and the conversations that you're having. When we talk about safe, we're not talking about going out into a space in which you can get stabbed. Like, that's not the safety we're talking about. We're talking about emotional safety, just in case, right? Or there's times where you're in a space with people who it's not good. Yes, get out of that. I'm not saying have a growth mindset of I can change these people. No, that's that's not the goal here. When we talk about being, safe, we're literally just talking about environments in which we are willing to have conversations that are uncomfortable. That's kind of the goal, is what I'm trying to set here. And what happens is, again, when we talk about understanding our values, once we understand your values, you can understand why certain conversations feel quote unquote unsafe or make you uncomfortable. We want ideally to give a space here where all peoples feel like I can say the thing I need to say, because this is academia. We are in school. We are, understanding that all different walks of life come together in this particular room, even if it's online, to have conversations. So we have to be really mindful of that. Also, we're going to talk about understanding what's an ideal value versus a real value. Don't forget to do the readings first. If you haven't done the readings, just pause me. I'll look cute for that. Is that cute? That's not cute. I'll pause like this. Anyway, pause me, go back to the readings, and come back, because I'm going to ask you what's an ideal value and what's a real value. And then we're also going to try and start to understand the values of others. Even if they don't align with your values, that doesn't change the fact that this other person or these other people have values that we need to understand as well. Again, even if it doesn't align with what you believe to be right and true, it's still important that we understand that, because if we can't understand other people's values, how are we going to have a conversation? We're not. That's the problem. We're in a space right now in the world where just because your values don't align with my values, I refuse to talk to you. And that's how we end up where we're at. And then you've got red against blue and this and that, and then it becomes a shit show. And we don't want that. We want to open up the communication for humanity. And that's the whole goal here, okay? And it's not easy. When I say it makes us uncomfortable, absolutely. It might hurt, right? You're like, oh, it's not what I believe. But it's still important to recognize, like, oh, I see where you're coming from. Because once someone understands where someone else is coming from and someone else feels heard, they're like, thank you. I appreciate that. I've never had anyone with your values talk with me about my values. And now we both understand. And then we have a conversation. And then you have, the thing where you all work together. Anyway, my phone keeps telling me it's overheating, and I get distracted by that. Anyway, it starts. You guys are seeing it right now. Anyway, we come together and you compromise. That's the damn word. All right. When you compromise. I'm so sorry for these videos, y'all. I'm working, doing my best. All right. And then we also have to recognize how our values are influencing our decisions. They just do. They absolutely do. Do we have bias? Absolutely. We always have bias because of our values. That's just how it is. The goal is to try and back away from the bias and be willing to listen, and also recognize when others have bias, and then we can go, all right, I can see where they're coming from, but their point of view is coming from a very biased point where they're not recognizing both sides. Okay. You all don't have my English 11 class, but a lot of the reasons why people do that and push on certain specific values is a form of manipulation. So you also want to be mindful when people are pushing your values, like, oh, yes, you got to be careful, because sometimes people do that to manipulate you to get you to do a certain thing. Okay. All right. When we talk about safety, we talk about safety in the stance of being understood. I want to feel in a space where I feel like I want to feel safe to be understood. I don't want to be able to I don't want to say my stuff, and then, I get people saying, radically terrible things. We here in this class is a safe space. If you at any point in time have anyone who is reaching out to you and harassing you, you got to let me know. No names will be said. Nothing. I promise you, I am here for you. I'm here for your safety. I'm here to help all peoples, right? Like, this is very important. So I want you to know this is a safe space. If at any point in time you do not feel safe, please reach out to me. I'm trying my best to be as neutral as possible in all things, but at some point you're going to see there might be a space where I'm like, I just cannot follow in that way. So anyway, you're going to notice also oftentimes I am vague, even though I'm telling you, be specific, be specific. There's some things where I cannot be wildly specific about because it won't truly apply, but you will need to be in your situation. When you go to describe things, you'll need to be more specific to your situation. Okay, back to back to the work here. Again, we need the safety, we need to feel understanding in order to feel free to think, to be able to share our things. And when we talk about having a growth mindset, our growth mindset is trusting that while we might be uncomfortable, we're willing to try something new. Let's try it. Let's see. If you didn't know in the Brainology, if you went back and saw some of the videos of someone who's trying and trying until they finally got it right, that's the goal. Okay. I want you to feel safe to fail in this class. Please feel safe to fail. You know what? Like, sometimes grades are just grades. They mean something, but they also don't mean something. The whole point and the whole hope that I have is that you're getting something out of class. That's the whole point, is that you get something out of the class, right? Grades are great, but what are you showing me that you're learning? What are you actually grasping? That's the whole goal out of this class, all right? And if I'm not seeing it, right, like, how can I know where you're at? So I want you to feel safe also to change your mind. From maybe you started this class with a very specific mindset, very specific values, and then you took the growth and fixed mindset, quiz, and you're like, maybe I need to change some things. And that's okay. When I first started college, no flippin' joke, I was the most closed-minded, narrow-sighted SOB you ever met in your life. And I took one, actually it was a religions class taught by a nun, and she took us all, because I lived in Hawaii at the time, and I went to undergrad at Chaminade University, Honolulu, and she took us to all of the churches, all of them. I went to a Hare Krishna church or temple. I went to a Mormon temple. I went to a Buddhist temple. I went to, I went to all the things, you name it. And I walked around, and when I started to see all the things were saying the same thing but in different ways, I was like, are you kidding me? And that was my realization. So my entire world changed dramatically after taking that one class. I'm not saying this class will do it for you, but I want you to be willing and trust and feel safe to be able to change your mind. Just because you said it on Wednesday doesn't mean you need to say the same thing on Thursday. I'm not saying being hypocritical, which is different. It is important to stand by certain values, right? But if you change your mind because you recognize all these other things, you're like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. That's different. And changing your mind is absolutely okay because you've become more experienced in something. That's our goal. All right. The more we learn, the more maybe our old beliefs don't hold true. I'm telling you, the things like, y'all, I'm like 44, 40 something. Oh my Lord, I don't even know how old I am anymore. Anyway, I'm at an age where, like, the more I learn, the more I don't know shit. The more I know, man, when I was 18, I thought I knew everything. God, my teachers must have hated me. But as I get older, I'm like, oh, right? The values and beliefs I used to hold no longer hold true now because of the experience and the things that I've seen and the things I've seen the people whom I love go through and the things that I've gone through. I'm like, wow, I really thought I was going to hold on to that one until I died, and then I had to let it go, and it was very freeing because I'm like, oh, I can change my mind at any time. This is great. I can grow with things. I can see something and go, oh, well, this I can see and I believe is true, so this must no longer be true, so I no longer need this anymore. And again, I'm being very vague because I want it to be applicable to you, okay? I hope that helps. I'm working on it. Okay. I want you to be encouraged to explore new ideas, new things, new values, new beliefs. Like, why not, man? If the world's going to end tomorrow, like, who cares? Let's just try something new. Let's really look at the world and, experience it. That's the thing I've learned the most. Got real sick, learned a lot of things, and I was like, you know what? I just want to be open to who knows what's out there, all right? So that was my lesson. You can have your own, all right? safe to change your mind, safe to change your beliefs, safe to experience that in this classroom. Okay. When we share the things that we value, it's important that we're just explaining how it matters to us. And as we are reading it as peers, we're just recognizing how this value applies to this person, not how you feel about the value. Okay, how you feel about the value is just how you feel about the value, but you got to let other people feel their experiences. Usually in class, I'll do this thing, and I'm not doing it this semester, but I'll ask students, after we talk a lot about humanity and nature, and I ask, can people, are people willing to die for nature as they would God and country? And you'd be very surprised at some of the answers. And it's a very cool, unique experience to see how people have certain values with certain things in this world. So give me 1 second. Okay, sorry. My light was flashing and I have vestibular issues, and I didn't need to have a seizure in front of you. Okay. All right. So our values always influence our decisions. Like every decision we make, every bias that we have is influenced by our values, which is why we change our values, which we change our decisions on things. Like I had some values where I held on very, very tightly. Like I held on to it like I just was never going to break this particular value. And then something happened. And then I was like, I guess I'm going to have to change this value, aren't I? Okay. I don't need to go into specifics, but I think y'all kind of have an idea of where I'm going with that. Okay. Things happen. All right. You can fill in the blank on that one. All right. So when we talk about values, we have real values and we have ideal values. Ideal values are the values that are ideal. Like, wouldn't it be awesome if I could be honest 100% of the time, every day, all day, never lie, never deceive, never nothing. I'm always honest. That's an ideal value. And a lot of people, it's very easy. Like, hey, look, if you don't do bad shit, you don't have to lie about it, right? That's an ideal value, would be honesty. Well, the real value is maybe as honest as you can be. I don't know what your real value. The real value is what you actually act upon. So the ideal value is ideal. This thing, wouldn't it be fantastic if I could live up to that? All right. And the real value is what you actually do. Maybe you are truly the most honest person, anyone's ever met. I really try and be as honest as I possibly can. And you know what? Sometimes you just got to say the thing. And so I try and have my ideal value is honesty, and I try and live by that without manipulating, without having motives behind why I say what I say or do what I do. Every day is different. Your best changes every day. So trust that. Okay. So, what we experience, what we actually do in life versus what we'd like to do. And that's okay that sometimes we don't always hit our ideal value, but we have to recognize, how do we live our lives? What are your values? And that leads me into, as we go on, all right? The more I know, the more I know nothing. So the more like my values, every time I do this in every semester, every class, my values always change. I'm like, ooh, I like that as my value. Nope, that one doesn't really work for me anymore. So what I'd like you to do is take a look at the list I have here. There's a picture, but there's also like a written list. And I want you to pick 4 to 5 values. 4 or 5 that you're like, I could live by those. Those I really value. Creativity, loyalty, wisdom, like pick something. I say you can be open for the values, but I'd really like you to stick closely to this list to the best of your abilities. It's okay if you need to throw in something outside of that really means something to you. You can put that as a value. So I will be a little bit flexible on that, but pick 4 to 5 and try and figure out here, are they ideal or are they real values? You tell me, are they going to be ideal? Like, oh, honesty. But the real value is like, maybe not so much. Okay. Now, the problem is you'd think morals would be universal, like prima facie values. We talk about prima facie values are values that all peoples believe to be values that should be upheld. Again, honesty, kindness, and consideration, and that kind of stuff. Sorry, my thing's blinking. The thing is, while prima facie values are these great values, are kind of moralistic, like things like, well, that's kind of like, live a good moral life. You can, these will come with it. But while some values are considered good, some people might consider some values bad, right? In this class, I want you to understand that I don't see values as good or bad, and we'll get to understanding right and wrong in just a second. So, the reason why I say this is for every person who has certain values, they value that based on their experiences and their needs. Values are also based on needs. Okay, so we could talk about like transgender care, and some people might say it's bad because insert reason here. Some people say it's good because insert reason here. Like, what one person's value is their value, what they need for their life. And we have to recognize, while it's not necessarily your value, that doesn't negate the fact that that is somebody else's and it means something to them. Okay, we have to be mindful of that, no matter what that is. Even if, say, you're very liberal and someone has a very conservative view, whether or not you believe in that conservative view doesn't matter. That's still their value, right? But just because you're conservative doesn't mean that you know what I mean? You still have to value this person too. So this is the part that is very important, that we take these two pieces, and this needs to understand this, right? We have to be willing to understand. You don't have to agree, but you do need to understand. And once we can do that, you can have conversations. You can start to feel safe again. Okay, while you feel uncomfortable right now having the conversation, that's okay. It's because you're like, I'm learning something new. While I might not have believed this, I understand now. And while I didn't believe this, I understand now. That's the goal, understanding. So we have an example like abortion. Someone might hold a very strong belief that it's morally wrong to partake in abortion. That's their belief. That's their belief. That's on their side. That's their thing. But that's okay. You don't have to partake in that, right? That's your thing. Of course, it's your value. That is what you hold to be true. But just because you hold that to be true doesn't mean that same value applies to someone else, because someone else might find that that particular like abortion is absolutely necessary for their livelihood. What happens here doesn't affect here. The difference is, this is just your value and how you believe it, and this is their value and how they believe it. It's two totally different things, all right, that actually don't ultimately affect one another, separate. Okay, so we have to remember that just because we feel a certain way about something doesn't mean it is wrong. It is just that is a different experience in life. So we could talk about trans care. Someone might find that it's not appropriate for their child, while some others might find that it has created a new beautiful life for them or their child, right? So again, some of these conversations might make you feel uncomfortable, but that's okay. That's just because maybe it's pushing the boundaries of what your comfortability is and your values and your experience. You haven't experienced it, or maybe you have, right? We can talk about Black history. Some people fear that teaching Black history might create an uncomfortable atmosphere, which is subjective. All right, and for children, subjective for children, while others find it's important to address the realities of history that America was founded on, which is actually objective. Subjective, feeling, objective, actuality. Okay, so feelings versus actuality would be the difference in values there. All right, question: is one's values right and is one's values wrong? You know what? Can't do that. Ed, we can't be saying you're right, I'm wrong. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm right, you're wrong. Whatever. There's no right or wrong in this. While you might feel for you that value is not right, that does not mean that that value is not right, right? Because that is your experience here. For this person, that value might very much be right. And we have to respect and understand that on both sides, no matter where you come from, right? Say you are all for abortion, but someone is not for abortion. That's understandable. Like, I respect that. Absolutely. It's totally your thing. But we also have to recognize that some people do want it. Okay, so we have to recognize there's the two, but we can't make that thing where one is forced upon the other. Like, we're not going to force you to do this abortion if you don't want that, right? But we're also not going to take it away from you because we don't want it. Do you see how that works? That's the thing we need to understand about values. We cannot force it necessarily on someone, let alone take it away from them. And so this is really hard because you can argue all the things on both sides. You could argue pronouns. You could say, well, I don't believe in he and she, or I'm sorry, I only believe in he and she, that there's only male and female, so I refuse to recognize how you want to be identified. Well, the problem with that is you're actually forcing your views on someone while you think it's the other way around. The difference is if someone's going by they, that's just an identity. That's just their name. They're not trying, that's just how they identify. They're not forcing it on you and forcing you to be they. That's not what that goal is. The goal is for them to say, but this is how I identify. It'd be like, say you're a guy and I'm like, oh well, she. I feel like if I was a guy, I'd be pretty mad. I'd be like, oh, hold on. I told you I am a male, and yet you keep calling me a she. You're disrespecting my choice and identity. And that's different than, us, not us, but someone forcing it on to somebody else. So I totally get it. I get if you're like, well, I don't believe in the pronoun of they, because I don't believe in that. Well, that's fine. Then you yourself don't have to partake in it for you. But that doesn't change the fact that people still have identities, right? And so this is why identity is very important. Again, when we talk about right and wrong, you can't say right and wrong when it comes to this stuff. It might be wrong for you, but not wrong for somebody else. So I know a lot of you might be like, that's not what I believe. I get it. This is hard. It's hard to see both sides, but we also have to recognize that there are two different views always and many different experiences. Okay. Now, something I want you to do is take a look at the reading where it talks about how you find your values. I don't need to talk for another 30 minutes about that. But in order to find it, I want you to take a look and understand how do you find what your values are. Okay, so take a look at that because I want you to see if those, after you do this, how you figure that out, if it still applies to the values you picked of your 4 and 5. Let's see here. Why do I need to understand my values? Well, you need to understand it because that's how you compose. Once you start to understand your values, you start to see where you might have biases towards other people, other places, other things. Like when you start to recognize your values, you might already know that. But it's also important to recognize, like, where might that be coming from? And will that affect other people if I start pushing these values so heavily? I don't know, right? You got to take a look at those. Now there's a spot where it's like, help, I can't find my values. Read that. That's going to give you some guidings. And then yes, values can and do change with experience. This class might change some of your values. Maybe not. Maybe it'll make you put your heels in a little deeper. I don't know. That's not up to me. That's up to you. They can and they will because you have experience in life. Like, right, when I talked about being born, when you're born, experience creates this, innate need to do more and to learn more and see more. And that's great. That is a part of human nature, is to want to learn more and have more understanding with the world around you. And that's our goal. Okay. Again, be open to other people's values. Take a look at the reading there. Again, we just have to really be mindful no matter what part of the whatever's you land on, we have to be understanding. I'm not saying it's easy because we're in a very volatile place in this world where we really want to just like, but no, me though. What about me? Well, the more we say me, the less we hear other people's voices and then shit just explodes. Shit's exploding. Okay. All right. And then last but not least, I really want you to take a look at your actions and are they aligned with your values? Let's see an example. Say you're very religious in some aspect and your religion says that you need to be mindful of all peoples. You need to love all peoples, but you're very hateful towards a certain group of people. That hate, does that align with the values of your, right? Is that action of hate align with your values of love and acceptance? Right? And you might say, well, my religion says that I can't. I can't. But then it also says that you can. So you really have to take a look. I know this sounds weird. Some of you might be like, what are you talking about? Take a look at your religion. Take a look at your values. Is it hypocritical? Is it recognizing love all peoples or only love certain amount of peoples, right? Like, what is that? And are your actions aligning with that? Maybe it is, and maybe you're okay with that. Or maybe your actions are not aligning with the things that you hold very true to you. And you might have to go, damn, I got to rethink some things, right? I got to rethink some of the people I hang out with, right? We will talk later about trauma, hate, and fear and how Sometimes these things influence these actions, or what we think are our values that we hold very true. We end up having actions that are very detrimental for others, right? So just be mindful of your values. What does it look like? How does it affect others? I don't know. You tell me. Real quick, I'm going to take a look at the reading response. It's going to be very similar to what I was asking you to do in this lecture. But mostly what I'd like you to do is consider when you're doing that, the reading response, what kind of personal event do you think has influenced your values? What sort of story might you be able to tell us? You might not have any. It might just be as simple as, I don't know, I was born with these values. This is what my family does. This is what I do. So my religion says this is what I do, right? It's understandable, y'all. I'm just curious to know what's inspired your, values. And I have, you'll see this later when we talk about the narrative. I think y'all have so much experience of things in life that I won't cover all of them. But my most recent was getting really, really sick and like physically unable to like walk. It was very scary. And it's because of that experience that has absolutely changed my entire life and my values, what I truly value. And I didn't realize that I really value my health and family and, certain things like stability or whatever. Anyway, so my values change all the time, every year, sometimes day to day, not in because I'm wishy-washy, but because every time I have experiences in life that kind of like shake me a little bit, I'm like, okay, what's my value today? What do I need to live by today? And that's something that you might want to consider. So if you have a story that you want to tell, I'd love to hear it. And it's really cool because then your peers, and you don't have to be, if it's something that's super personal and you're like, I want to be specific, but how specific? Message me, and then I could say, all right, this is, it's what's your level of comfortability? Because I know I'm very particular about being specific. A lot of times that's also when you're pulling from readings, so to show me that you read. But yeah, message me if you have questions on that one, if you feel maybe uncomfortable, or maybe you just want to share it with me, and then I can give you the credit so you don't need to share it with your peers if you're a little too uncomfortable with it. I get it. We are in a volatile world. I try and keep a very safe space. It does not go unnoticed if I see things. I do report them, so please be careful if you're saying inappropriately crude, rude, disrespectful things. That's the only thing that you'll hear from me. So anyway, aside from that, our goal here is just figure out, who are we? What are our values? What actions do we take that are in line with it or not aligned with it? And where might I have biases in these values? The reason why I say that is when we start doing research, you might have biases in your research because of your values. See how this all ties together? Everything ties, I promise. So anyway, I'm very excited to see what y'all come up with. Thank you very much for being willing with a growth mindset to push a little on the line of uncomfortable and trust the fact that we are all here living our own experiences, and we might all in some way relate to what you're experiencing. So because we are human, and the human experience is all the same in the same way. We live, we breathe, we die. So, wow, that ended on a morbid note. I didn't mean it that way, but I mean, we're all here living on this earth. And what happens in between is the best part. So tell me what you've got. Thank you.